next day, but the rest of you west of me are all in May 8th. So welcome to the May 8th show, and I hope you're having a nice week. I hope you didn't get drunk on Cinco de Mayo, the worthless holiday, if you ask me. And I welcome my producer, the man I love dearly. Gotten to know him quite well, and he's a wonderful, wonderful person. Wonderful in ways that probably most of you wouldn't even understand. But never met him, but here he is, Swami. Good evening, sir.
Namaste and blessings. And in honor of Cinco de Mayo, may the 5th be in you.
Oh, God. That's bad.
Yeah, it is.
The 5th. Yeah, 5th of wild turkey or something.
Oh, whatever your choice might be in the 5th variety.
No, I'm not drinking at all. It does me no good whatsoever. It interferes with everything I want to accomplish at all. So I don't even have, and of course my mother died 2 years ago around now, and she's 95 and a half, and I managed to get her off booze. She wouldn't listen to anybody, but I finally got a young, handsome doctor to come in and tell her, you know, Rita, vodka is no fountain of youth. And she stopped right then, and she would drink water and go, I'm imagining that it's vodka. So, but she would try and force me to take a sip of like champagne or wine it was awful. Always, she just couldn't accept the fact that I didn't want any alcohol.
Right, right.
But it really does no one any good as far as I can tell.
No.
But
I've never been a big fan, you know. I mean, I tried some real hardcore power drinking when I was young and stupid, and it didn't turn out well. So yeah. Well, never mix beer, heavy red wine, and hard stuff. I tried that one night that I'll never forget. And don't play quarters with Everclear.
I had my armor on the toilet all night.
I had to go to the hospital and get my stomach pumped.
Oh, God.
It was awful. I was in the military. I was in the U.S. Air Force and was stupid enough to play quarters with Everclear. For anyone unfamiliar with the
no, I don't know what that is.
Oh, that's 190 proof.
Oh, grain alcohol.
Yeah. It's good for like cleaning your driveway, but human consumption, nah, don't do that, and don't take it in large amounts. And I did both, and it was just a wretched experience all the way around.
Oh my God. And I told my wife, I said, I hope you don't drink. She goes, no, I don't drink. And I said, well, because if you do, then it's divorce. So, but I haven't had any problem with that.
Very good.
Yeah. So this is listener-supported radio. And if you're a kind, generous person and you love listening to this radio station, you should donate some money by going to freedomslips.com. About a third of the way down on the right is a box where you can use PayPal, a Visa or MasterCard, debit or credit card, and you can make a donation as little as $1. If you donate $50, you get a thumb drive with 900 survival documents on it. And if you donate $100, you get 35,000 non-GMO seeds in a freezer pack, and you get a DVD disc with 900 survival documents on it. And Lord knows, I keep saying this, and the stuff is happening everywhere. There are signs that these are the end times. We're coming right up on them. And, I don't know if you listen to my show, how you could possibly be thinking you're going to be good for the next 40 years without any stores, money, income, a safe place to live, or even possibly a home. So,
far better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Exactly. So this is the time to consider donating some money. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the freedomslips.com page, you will see a mailing address for you to mail a check and or a money order. They do not want cash, and we all know why. We've all had experiences with the post office that lead us to believe that we shouldn't trust them as far as we could throw them. Regardless of what they say or how nice your local postmistress is, really just don't send cash. And yet people do all the time. So I don't know what to tell you. But anyway, Revolution Radio does not want to receive cash. They would like to get a check. And now, if you write a check or a money order, you can write like a 5-page letter criticizing the station, saying what you like and what you don't like, what you'd like more of, what you'd like less of, what annoys you, what pleases you. All of that can be put in there. Now, if you use your credit card or PayPal, I don't know about PayPal, but I know you can make a comment. So that's useful too. You know, when you put something out there and you know people are listening, but you have no idea what they think, it's really nice to have some feedback. And we all need feedback. And of course, you know, most of us, what we really want is appreciation, saying, well, that was really great. So, you know, that's what I'd like to see. Now, I've been doing a remote viewing experiment, and then I didn't open the envelopes last week because we had a caller, and we went on for quite a while. And so I am going to rediscuss this. There were 3 envelopes. Each had a separate object in it. Somebody remote viewed envelope number 1 and guessed or saw that there was a folding pocket knife in envelope number 1. And that was 100% correct. And I was glad to get my pocket knife back. Now, right here, I have envelope number 2, which I'm going to open.
Okay. Now, this one was the one that had a curvature involved.
Yes, it has a curvature, and somebody guessed that it was a leaf, which was actually pretty good because it is natural. But what it is, if you've ever eaten a lobster, this is the small part of the claw. Each claw has a large part and a small part. This is the small part, and it definitely looks like an S. And I've been collecting these because I'm thinking about making a lobster claw necklace, like a bear claw necklace, but a lobster claw. And this definitely has a nice curve at the end. It comes to a point. This is from the tearing claw. Now, one claw on a lobster crushes. It's got broad, flat surfaces. Just gets something in there and just squeezes until it breaks. The other claw is sharp little points, and it tears. So this is the lower, smaller part. It's about 3.5 inches long because it was like a 2-pound lobster. And by the way, it was delicious. Melted butter, minced some garlic, dipped the lobster. And it was only out of the ocean about 5 hours. So most of you would never see a lobster that fresh. And let me tell you, there's a big, big difference, as you might imagine. And so that's what was in envelope number 2. It's a natural object. It's red. It's got little spikes on one side, and the top of it curves over and comes to a point. So you can hear I'm dropping it on the table, so that gives you an idea. It almost sounds like porcelain.
Yeah, it does.
And so that was what was in envelope number 2. I don't know if any of you tuned in on that and were afraid to say it. Please, when I do these kind of contests, which I am going to do again, don't be afraid. I mean, look, what if you get it exactly right? Isn't that that's like winning the lottery. That means that you really are remote viewing stuff. I mean, think about it. Haven't any of you ever had some insight that you couldn't explain and then it came out to be true? Now, here's object number 3, envelope number 3. This is heavier. And I'm going to open this up. And this, I figured it would be very hard to get, but you know, you don't know who's out there, what powers they have. This is a piece of granite, and it is 3 inches long and 1.5 inches high at the widest, although it sort of comes to a point. It's a broken piece. And what's interesting is that it's green, and it's green because it's copper ore. Granite that has copper in it. And I know that on the Blue Hill Peninsula, there were several Superfund sites because there were million-year-old volcanoes that eroded away, leaving the central part of the cone still there. And that's where hot metal vapors rose through the molten stone through vents and condensed. And people about 100 years ago discovered that if they dug down in there, they found every single kind of metal in commercial qualities: gold, silver, zinc, copper, nickel, and of course all the lovely ones, cadmium, arsenic, lead, zinc, all these things. So Anyway, I always thought that's what they were doing. They were on the surface and they were digging down the cone. And then I was working for a stone business. I was the manager of one of their stores. And a guy came in who was a geologist, and he goes, I have something that would really interest you. I'm going to give it to you. And he went out in the car and he gave me this. And this they drilled a mile-deep shaft, which I can't tell you how unusual that is in Maine. That may be usual in Colorado or somewhere else, but this is not usual in Maine at all. They drilled a mile-deep straight shaft, and then they lowered all this equipment down there and reassembled it down there, and they drilled 8 miles of tunnels under Blue Hill, Maine. And this is one of the pieces from a mile down. You will never see a piece of green granite on the surface. I don't know if it's because it corrodes, the weathers, or whatever it does. But so this is an unusual thing. This is granite. It's heavy. Granite weighs about 200 pounds a cubic foot. And it's green. Very unusual. So I figured that would be the greatest challenge. I thought somebody was going to get the curved thing right away, thinking, that what was the first guess, a paperclip or a guitar pick? Yeah, both. Yeah. If you held a paperclip up to this lobster jaw piece, it would match pretty closely, and a guitar pick right up against that curve would match pretty closely too. So that was a really good guess. You were onto something. And the person that said a leaf, I guess you could say they were on the right track because they knew it was a natural object. But would you say when somebody makes a bear claw necklace, like I'm sure that I've seen them in movies, I've seen a couple in person, do they have it so the tip of the claw points down towards the chest, or do they have it turned so that the tip of the claw is sideways pointing outward or sideways pointing inward? Down, I believe. Down. See, this would really hurt you. If you had a lobster claw necklace like that and you bumped into something, this comes to quite a sharp point. I guess I could file the points down. And you wouldn't know what it was. It would just look like a little orange tamale, like a jalapeno pepper. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I thought, I've never seen a lobster claw necklace. And, I live in the land of lobster. Why can't I make a lobster claw necklace? You can. So anyway, there will be another contest. It will differ slightly. I haven't decided when I'm going to announce that. But if this interests you, and I sure hope it does, because, you're not going to go to school for this. You can, though. I mean, you could look it up and find somebody that will teach you. But this is a real opportunity for you to discover that you have powers and abilities that go far beyond anything that anybody ever told you. And you really are a powerful eternal soul with an electromagnetic body. And you can reach out across time and space, which most of what you see is an illusion anyway. It's like we're in a play and we don't even know it. And anyway, you have powers that go beyond anything that anybody ever tells you. Because they don't want you to use your powers. Imagine if everyone could find out every secret. That would scare the bejesus out of all the elite and powerful. So, and the remote viewers sometimes go to like alien bases and they're exploring remote viewing. And then they realize the aliens know they're there. They're sitting in their home on Earth, but yet their consciousness is on an alien base, and the aliens can see them. So there's some scary stuff you could do, but it isn't scary because of you or what you're doing. It's scary because of other people's reactions to it. So, Swami and I were discussing how a lot of people who tune into the higher level, one of their first reactions is fear. Mm-hmm. Now, I think it's in Buddhism, they have a carved figure. It was very fearsome, and it's known as the keeper of the lower gate. And it's because as you go into your higher mind and you become accustomed to doing that, and realizing that you're an eternal soul and that you have all of these abilities, which you can develop by practice. As you start doing that, one of the first things that not everybody, but most people come across is the fear of like, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? And it's the fear of yourself, really. And that's why the Buddhists represent it with this carved figure that's known as the keeper of the lower gate, because as you go from your lower mind to your higher mind, you're sort of crossing this threshold. And the first thing you have to deal with are your fears regarding it. But I can tell you that I've never had a problem with it, and I've never had fears. Every realization is like, oh my God, it's like so exciting. It's like, I can't wait to tell people. I just feel completely energized, and it's just like, and what I decided to do, some people like to do it only if they go into like a trance-like state. They sit cross-legged, and then they go do a meditation, and then they enter that state. I decided at an early age, in my early 20s, that what I wanted to do was to incorporate this into my everyday, all day long, without like stopping and saying, well, I've got to tune in or something like that. Just to like make the tuning in a natural process. So people who have known me for a while know that I will say things that they're like, how could you possibly have known that? And I didn't even know it till I said it. But I've heard things come out of my mouth that if you had asked me beforehand, did I know anything about that, I would have said no. But when I start talking, it's like this flow opens up from my higher mind, and things come out that, I'm really glad came out. And so these are the kinds of things that I hope to, and I know not all of you are going to respond to this, but I hope that some of you would. And Swami is going to be helping me as I do this from time to time, because this is a very important part of what he does as a Hindu guru, as a master. And
yep.
I think we were talking about some people get very upset. There are even people who have psychiatric problems, because what they're seeing and what they're realizing is so far out of the box. Now, I mentioned that my wife sees people, especially people who are great liars. In other words, they are evil, they're perverted, they're twisted, they're really nasty, they're selfish as hell, they're like a black hole of selfishness. And they walk down the street and they may have a hairdo, jewelry, they may have a nice clothing, and Janet sees them as the horrible creatures they really are. And the only time she's ever seen any artwork that showed people this way is when she looks at the David Dees painting. And if you remember, we had him on for an hour about a month ago or more. And if you go look up David Dees, Dees, you will see these people look like zombies. But Janet sees people walking down the street that everyone else sees. Oh, isn't that person nice? Aren't they socially correct? Aren't they politically correct? Don't they look perfectly manicured? But when you open up your antenna to the reality, the thing that's in front of you, the superficial illusion that's in front of you is not the truth. But you see the truth. Well, that can be frightening, right, Swami?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's because what you're seeing is like so far out of the box. You don't have preparation from elementary school or kindergarten or high school or college or your family, your church. You don't have any preparation for this. And what you're doing, is you're seeing the truth.
Yeah, that's one of the downfalls of the Western mindset, is that it is so limited. It doesn't, in our Western education systems, in our Western religious systems, there is no explanation given to everyone regarding any sort of mystic experiences, which are totally natural for people to have, but it's not really, gone into through any of our education or religious systems. So people, see this and they don't have a box to put it in their mind, and if they just had a way to, I don't know, as the cool kids say, to grok this stuff, then they'd be okay with it and they could develop but without any kind of a frame of reference for these things to go in, it generally turns into a fearful response because they don't know, Right.
Well, I worked as a psychiatric aide in one of largest mental hospitals. It was in Connecticut. It was called Fairfield Hills. It had about 1,100 patients and on 1,000 acres. And they put me, because I'm a big guy, they put me in the Ward 3C, which was all the killers. Mm-hmm. They had murdered, and some of them had murdered many times. But somebody would say, "Oh, they're better. Well, let's let them out." And like within days, they'd be strangling some woman, and then back to the court system, and then back to the mental hospital. And but I got used to. I did that while I was trying to start my law practice. And my father goes, "Oh, well, you can't do that," and I go, "Yeah, I can." Because I would do everything would occur in the morning, and then by 3:00 in the afternoon, I could be over at the mental hospital and work till 11. And so I saw a lot of mental patients, and of course, some of them really, really screwed up. No question about it. I'm not even arguing and debating that. But I will tell you that there were times when these so-called mental patients would say the exact truth, because I could see it myself. They're telling the truth. The veil was gone, and we're both looking at the reality of a situation, and I know they're getting it correctly, but the doctors are saying, well, they're really screwed up, and everything they say is wrong. No, it's not. Some of these people, because of their condition, the veil is gone, and they see things, and of course that they have no preparation for that. There's no box for them to put that in. There's no way for them to handle it. And of course, they're very... they start talking about it, and then the doctor's like, oh, there you go again, schizophrenic, paranoid schizophrenic. Well, it's not paranoia if they really are out to get you. So don't forget.
There you go. It's just hypersensitivity.
Right. So, but there's really nothing to be afraid of. I mean, this is really exciting stuff. When I learned that I could do this, and the way I learned about it is by reading these books about people that had developed these skills. And I'm like, wow, I want to be able to do that. And I thought, well, where do I go to school for that? And I didn't know where I could go to school. And I went to a couple of cult-like groups which I won't name, but I went to a few of them just, for an introductory thing. And I'm looking at the guy talking to the group, and I'm like, no, I could never, ever follow this person. I'm much happier doing it on my own, and I have done it on my own. So that's why I'm speaking from real experience. This isn't from some book or something happened to somebody else. I've seen things before they happen. I've known they were going to happen. I've told people they were going to happen, and then they happened. So, and look, if you're a skeptic, you're probably not listening to this program very often anyway. But
true enough. You sort of weed them out yourself,
Yeah, but if you are a skeptic, listen, all I can tell you is go try some of this stuff. Like just, you're locked in your room, open the door and step outside into the sunlight. That's where this stuff is happening. So, and I was discussing the concentration exercise. You learn to focus on, you eliminate every thought except one, then you eliminate even that last thought, but yet you're conscious and you're tuning into your higher self, and your higher self will make impressions that you will remember. You'll see them. When you see them, that's with your third eye. But you also can open up all the extrasensory. You've got 5 senses, but then there's the extrasensory, and there are people who can, from touch or taste or hearing or smelling or seeing, can know far more than anyone else could know by the same method. Right. And that could be you. You could be doing this, and there's nothing to be afraid of. I mean, you're by yourself at home. And the reason why I say by yourself is a good way to start, because there's so many skeptics that are just going to, they're going to just put you down for trying this stuff. So try it on your own. And, let's say you called your cat, but your cat didn't come home. Tune in on your cat. Tell him, look, come home now. I love you. Tune in where he is, what's going on with him. The same with your wife. You wonder where she is or what's going on. My wife and I can both do that completely. I mean, sometimes it takes me up to 10 minutes, but sometimes it only takes me a minute to figure out where she is and what she's doing. And, of course, now I know she's pretty predictable. She stopped to talk to somebody invariably, but I'm wondering, why isn't she home? And, But anyway, and of course, some of you, if you figure that out, you might not be happy with what you learn, but that's the relationship that you have. So in any case, I started talking 2 weeks ago about getting a piece of bell wire and bending it, cutting it so it's 3 feet long, taking the insulation off it, straighten it out, and bend it so in the exact center there's a little loop, no bigger than 1/4 of an inch. And it's okay if the wire touches itself as it goes around the loop where it crosses to go the other way. So it's like you're going straight across, then you go down, make a circle, and then go back straight across again. And then you put a push pin into the top of let's say a wine bottle or a cork, or you could use a plastic container. It could be a laundry detergent container. Just put a push pin into the cap after it's empty, of course. And or else somebody's going to be mad that you're leaking detergent everywhere. And and then balance the wire, take a scissors and nip it a little bit. You're gonna have to bend the ends down so that the loop is actually the highest point of the wire. And that will enable the loop to stand up straight. And then you will put your finger about 1.5 inches from the end of the wire, and in your mind command it to push. And as you move your finger closer and closer to the wire will start to back off. And you can follow it around in a circle all day without ever touching it. And this is in a room with all the windows closed, with no wind, nobody blowing on it, like going, you didn't see them do that, supposedly. None of that. But the interesting thing is then you can tell your mind to pull the wire, and lo and behold, the wire will follow your finger. Now, how is that possible? I told you last week, or in the week before, hold your hand up against a neutral surface. Like you're sitting in a room right now and maybe the ceiling's painted white. Hold your hand up at full length so that you can see all your fingers, and look past your fingers. And you will see that for about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch around your fingers, there's a denser gray area. In other words, this is not just a silhouette of fingers against a white ceiling. Right around your fingers is a gray area, a denser area. That is your energy field. You are an electromagnetic being. And if you do enough meditation, you'll start to see auras, and you'll see other people's auras. So, but anyway, I wished somebody had tried this, and I'm opening up the phone line. So if anybody has any comments about this or any experiences related to it, I'd like them to call in. So, Swami, would you hand out the numbers?
If you would like to get in the sandbox here at Studio A, all you got to do is dial 347-688-2902. Once again, that's 347-688-2902. And you can join Gordon James Gianninoto on The Whole Agenda.
Yeah, and the thing is I've done this in large groups of people. I first did it in 1972 at the University of New Haven, where I was getting my last 2 years of a 4-year degree in psychology. And I demonstrated it, and people just didn't know what to make of it. It was very rare that somebody couldn't do it. I would say the rate of success was like 90 to 95%. The interesting thing is, if you put that on the coffee table and you fall asleep on the couch, or you put it on your dresser and you fall asleep in bed, when you wake up in the morning, one end of the wire will be pointed right at your head. So it's just an interesting kind of a thing. But it once again, what it does is it shows that there's a lot more to this life than the average person would want you to know. And the doctors aren't going to be discussing it, scientists aren't going to be discussing it, and yet the foundations of many special talents in this world are to get an understanding of what's going on. And this is one way to get it. You see it with your own eyes. You see your energy field. Then you see it moving things at a distance. And like I said, when a pencil, you drop a pencil and it's rolling across the desk and it's about to fall on the floor, and you command it to stop. And you see, I've used this term before, but it's emotional certainty. You have to believe with all your heart that you are stopping it, and it will stop. And you have to believe with all your heart that you're not stopping it. You could say, I'll bet this pencil is going to continue rolling and fall on the floor. So you don't have enough power to throw the pencil at 20 miles an hour and bounce it off your desk and then stop it in midair and bring it back to your desk. No, we're not talking about that kind of power. I mean, if everybody had that kind of power, you could just imagine how bad off the world would be with all the selfish people out there. So I'm assuming that most of my listeners are unselfish, and they're going to learn about these abilities, and they're going to put them to unselfish uses to help other people. And that's the way I'd like to see it. And I'll bet there's some selfish people listening, and they're thinking, how can I use this to hurt other people? How can I use this to control other people? But stay away from that, okay? We're not trying to control other people, because the one thing you don't want to do is interfere with somebody else's free will.
Right.
What you want to do is to exercise and expand and grow your free will and your freedom. And, eventually you're going to realize, why am I putting up with this domination and control, this programming from everywhere around me? You're going to say to yourself, why? Why? Because you have the freedom to be who you are, when you want to be there, and do what you want to do. So it's a really big world out there, and you have the power to create, because we are all creators in training. So that's what's going on. The purpose of your lifetime in a physical body on Earth is to learn and then teach. So as you learn this, I'm expecting that you're going to show other people. And this is going to eventually be common knowledge among everyone, that everyone has these abilities. And then you're going to figure, how can we use this to help each other? And that's why when one person does something, it has a certain effect. But if a group of 3 people do it together with the same intent to materialize reality, it's so much more powerful. And it isn't just 3 times more powerful, it's more like 9 times. So it's like a geometric progression. It multiplies itself. You get a group of 30 people holding hands, all hoping for the same thing and trying to materialize the same thing. It is so powerful. So this is something, and like I've said before, we've taken individuation as far as it can be taken. We've got every possible difference has been listed and analyzed, but now is the time when you look at another person, not to say what makes us different, but instead to say, what do we have in common? What can we do together that neither of us could do by ourselves? And if you have that attitude, you're going to be very successful and happy person, because you're going to realize what's going on, and you're going to be able to precipitate your reality around you. And I have the pleasure of having done that with several different things. So, not the least of which is this mountaintop I'm sitting on. It wasn't for sale, and a guy in another country had bought it to build a house here. And 15 years went by, and I just called the realtor every 3 months. He goes, what don't you get about what I said? It's not for sale. Let me show you another piece of property. And I said, no, this is my piece of property. I can see it. It's going to be mine. And other people would ask me, do you know where you want to move to? And I go, no, I haven't really decided yet. So, yeah, I was lying. But the reason why I did that is because if I told other people, when you're in the process of creation and you're not like a
Uh-oh. You're cutting out there, Gordon.
How to put, let's see, you can call me back if you want to.
Yeah, let me try terminating you here and adding you back. Okay. Everyone, please stand by. I'm going to get Gordon back on the line here in just a moment.
Is that better?
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
So Uh, I had some things that I wanted to talk about last week, and some of them went by because they were, timely. But one of them was, my wife's son works for the Maine Department of Labor, and he told her, which I know he wouldn't have told me because I wouldn't believe it for a second, but the economy is getting so much better. So a couple of days after he said that, they came out with the gross national product has increased 0.2%. I mean, that's the same as not increasing at all. That's like a dead stop. So nobody can say the economy is getting better. You may live in one place where there's still a job or there's still something that can happen, but everyone else, Janet and I went to Bangor recently, and we came back on a Saturday night, and there was like maybe 10 cars that passed us either our side of the road or the other side of the road. It's a 2-hour drive. It's on like 4 different major highways, and nobody was out on Saturday night. Nobody. And so the question is, why not? Well, they just don't have the money to go out and do anything. So at the same time, there was a news story that people are practically lining up to commit suicide off the George Washington Bridge, which I understand is 288 feet above the Hudson River. And in all the years that I've been hearing this, that people commit suicide, only one person ever survived it. And of course, when you hit water at even 60 feet, it's like hitting cement. So the only possible way to survive is to be vertical, hold your nose, pinch your nose with your finger, try and create the least resistance, and just zip into the water like a knitting needle and hold your breath and then come back to the surface. But people are lining up. It's gotten to the point now where they know that every day and a half, somebody is going to be jumping off the George Washington Bridge to kill themselves. So I guess it's the economy. I guess people feel it's the end of the world and there's nothing more to live for. I mean, what do you think it is, Swami?
Well, there's any number of potential stressors and triggers, I mean, I don't really think we can fairly chalk it up to any one thing, So many people at this point, whether it be an economic situation, whether it be feeling discordant with the energetic dynamic at the moment. Some find that very upsetting in and of itself and really don't know what's going on, and they don't know what to blame. They just feel like crap, and they can't get a handle on it, and they end up, reaching.
Well, I hope that none of our listeners are ever going to feel that way, because it's easy to get discouraged. And, a lot of times people have, they say that depression is anger turned inward. And there are a lot of reasons to be angry, because there are people blocking you at every turn from being a free, independent soul. And unless you get some personal tools to allow you to survive that, you might feel that you're in a dead end, but you're not. And as many souls are here on earth, and there are people who feel alone, even if they're surrounded by people, because the people who are around them don't support them and don't try and help them. But believe me, on the other side, there are so many souls that are not here in a physical body on the third dimension right now, who love you and care about you. If you would just take the time, go off by yourself once again, so you don't have other people laughing at you, and say, listen, I know there are spirit guides and souls and unselfish extraterrestrials and all kinds of advanced souls on the other side. Please, please help me see the way I should go, that I can become a better person and happier and more successful. And you will attract those people to you, and they will start helping you. You're not going to necessarily have a knock at the door and there's an angel saying, can I come in? I want to talk to you. It's not going to be like that, but you might notice in a subtle way that your whole attitude changes. And a lot of things that people get discouraged because they go, well, I can't have a new car, therefore I'm going to kill myself. Well, they've worked themselves into the position where they either have a new car or they die. That's nobody else's fault except theirs. And you should never, ever be confused by possessions and people. And if you have any question over the value of your life, go out and volunteer and help other people. You're going to see that you are so much appreciated, and it's so rewarding personally to help other people. Now, different people have different talents. Maybe you want to go play some music for some people, or maybe you want to help cook a meal for somebody, or maybe you want to join a soup kitchen, and maybe you want to join a food bank. Maybe you'd like to be part of Meals on Wheels, or, a program like that, or Neighbors Helping Neighbors, or, Homes for Humanity, things like that. I mean, it's up to you. What are you good at? What would make you feel the best if you could use those talents that you already know you have to make the world a better place? Then, you won't be so immersed in these dark feelings that you don't know what to do with. And, I've seen it myself, that people who sometimes they get so depressed they actually do need medication. I'm generally against medication because I just watch those commercials and they go, well, this will help you with the nerve damage in your feet from diabetes. But of course, it might make your face swell up and lock your facial expressions and cause cancer and a heart attack. And lost the use of
all these side effects that are worse than the condition being treated.
Feet won't sting, and some of them are so ridiculous. Like if you're past menopause and you want to have sex, but you're too dry down there, you could take this pill and it's going to make you lubricated, but the side effects are like, oh my God, breast cancer, depression, suicidal thoughts. And please tell your doctor if you have suicidal thoughts. Well, I'm presuming that you're not going to go to a doctor, and I'm presuming that you're not going to be taking those pills. But there are some pills, I will admit, do work. What you want to avoid is to be so off the wall that they want to give you Haldol, because that is the worst. They would give people like massive doses of Haldol, and then they wouldn't say a word about anything. Well, how could they? They can't. Right. They don't. It prevents you from thinking even. Yep. And then they take them off it. And this would happen in the mental hospital all the time. Then next week they die of a heart attack. You go, oh, yeah, was it the Haldol? Oh, no, he wasn't on Haldol at the time. No, but he only took 10 million milligrams of Haldol in the last month,
Right. So, I used to work as a CNA in a locked psych unit. And, okay. I got people
think so. But anyway, there are medications. Like I've known Prozac work for a few people. Now that has a terrible reputation, but I've seen it work for a few people. Mm-hmm. And there's other antidepressants and things like that. But anyway, I guess we're reaching the end of this first hour, are we?
We're at 44.
And what does that mean?
It's 44 minutes after the...
No, but we have 12 more minutes, or...
16.
Oh, okay. So you're going to love this story. This I couldn't believe that the guy even had the nerve to say this. The state of Utah was having hearings on whether they should legalize medical marijuana. Mm-hmm. Now, it wasn't a general legislature vote. It was for a committee, because if it's approved by the committee, then it goes to the floor of the legislature for a vote. So the committee was discussing it. It was a 5-member committee, and they heard all this testimony about marijuana is like a wonder drug. It's got no side effects. It's like, all this stuff, why it should be legalized for medical purposes. And the last person to get up and speak was the head of the Utah DEA. And he got up and said, now, I hope you're all holding on to something, because I don't want you falling on the floor. He said that if they allow any more marijuana to be cultivated in the state, the wildlife is going to get stoned and attack humans. So, I mean, humans don't even attack humans if they smoke marijuana. No. So they said, well, how can you say this? Well, give us an example. And he goes, well, agents were we were clearing an illegal patch of marijuana, and right in the center, this rabbit had chewed up a little patch for himself in the center that was clear, and he was gradually working on all the marijuana around it. And when we cleared up to where the rabbit was, he didn't run away. He looked at us with his stoned eyes, and he glared at us because we were taking his marijuana patch away. And you're like, well, did he attack? No. Did you think he was going to attack? Well, I didn't know what he was going to do, but we don't in Utah need any more of this stoned wildlife attacking. So I thought I would mention this because I'm sure that many of you have grown marijuana, and you probably know how dangerous the woodchucks, the deer, bunny rabbits can be.
That reminds me of that Monty Python, pointy teeth.
Exactly.
God.
So I couldn't believe it. It was just ridiculous. Then there's just a whole bunch of stuff that goes by. My wife is on Facebook, and she keeps expanding the UFO connections and stuff like that, and then so we get these postings from people, and I'm like, oh, I can't believe it, So then she's more and more. She's said that she wants to me to dictate an answer to her, and she types it out and puts it on her Facebook page. So in response to this, but the Russian government just claimed that they can call in saucers anytime they want. And then as it was some article about that, and it was that the Russian military, every time they do something with dangerous weapons, it seems like saucers turn up. And I just want to clear the air with this, that, listen, you're talking about extraterrestrials with spaceships. They have an agenda. They're doing stuff. Just because you go outside with a laser, or you call them, or you start playing with your nukes to see if they'll show up, that's not calling them. They have to agree. So if you, and I'm sure a lot of you would like to consciously see a flying saucer, what you can do is you can say, 2 Saturdays from now, I'm going to be outside in the state park, and I would like to see a saucer. Is that possible that you can arrange it? So now you're giving them 2 weeks, and maybe something will happen. In my experience, it's better than even odds that it will, because you've given them the time to suddenly say, stop what you're doing in your spaceship and come down here to my house and show yourself to me. Well, why would they have the time to do that, or the interest? What's the point? So anyway, that kind of gets to me. Then I mentioned the earthquake lights in San Diego. So somebody asked Nancy Leader, were those earthquake lights, because they seem to form the Big Dipper. So I didn't know that. I wasn't aware that there were enough flying saucers, about a dozen of them, in the sky during the day and the night over San Diego to form the Big Dipper upside down. Well, who cares if it's upside down or right side up? Because if you know anything about astronomy, you know that the two end stars on the Dipper, in other words, not the handle end, but the other end, point at the North Star Polaris. So during the day in a 24-hour cycle, if you took a picture, you would see that the stars make circles around Polaris. And so half the day, every day, the Big Dipper's upside down. And half of the day, it's right side up. In other words, it would hold water. So, excuse me. So, and by the way, I did go to the doctor. I did have a massive sinus infection, and I'm taking antibiotics, and I hope to be a lot better off soon. So if anyone was wondering what was going on with me, I felt like crap since I came back from the UFO conference in Phoenix. And I talked to about 6 other people that felt the same way. So whatever we had, we got there. And now we're all taking antibiotics, and we're all feeling better. So God bless doctors and antibiotics. As people say, oh, I don't like antibiotics. Well, I've always had a good experience with them. Anyway, so Maureen Ellsbury, who held the UFO conference, posted, God knows why. You'd think she's supposedly involved with MUFON and the UFO conference, you'd think she'd be thinking extraterrestrials first, though. Like that would be the first reason for something would be number one would be extraterrestrials. But anyway, she posted that the lights in San Diego were lights from TV towers. So I thought, I would love to speak at the UFO conference, and I do not want to dictate an answer to Janet to post on there and say, no, it's not. But anyway, this is what the Zetas said, because Nancy had a long discussion with me about this. The San Andreas Fault in San Diego is about to pop. There's going to be a huge jolt to the west. And this display with the flashing red saucer in the middle of the dipper was to attract people's attention to look at it. And when they looked at it, they received a telepathic message about what's about to happen with the earthquake in San Diego. So this is not exactly earthquake lights. This is extraterrestrials warning people telepathically. Now, I don't know if you remember, Swami, but about 5 years ago, there were huge tetrahedrons, which are three-sided pyramids, floating in space above London, Paris, and
Moscow,
and, Beijing, Moscow, other places, Colombia, and you can look them up on YouTube and see them. And the Zetas said about those that those were warnings to all those people that those areas are going to be flooded in the future. And while they were looking at these huge tetrahedrons, which never made it to the news, let alone the scientific news, they were told that it was all going to be underwater, and they were told that what's going to be happening. Well, now, 5 years later, you don't see any water flooding London, Paris, Moscow, or Beijing, although all the forecasts are that it will be. That's what the earth changes are going to involve. Those are actually very low-lying areas. For instance, Paris and London are at sea level. Beijing is not too far above sea level. And most of these big cities have rivers that connect them to the ocean. And, of course, if the ocean rises, it's going to go right up the river valley and flood the city. So this is not a surprise. So we're talking about 5 or 6 years ago these things happened, and we don't see any flooding yet. But now we have this over San Diego. Does this mean that we're going to have to wait 5 years for something to happen, or does this mean that it's going to happen in July, which is what the USGS says is about to happen, and that's why they've got Operation Jade Helm on the go. So, you put that together with the deployment of special forces, the movement of the shackle railroad cars, which hadn't been moved since they were manufactured, and you put that together with FEMA taking over Walmarts, then you put that together with the European Space Satellite discovering their huge methane plumes over at the Four Corners and in the Salton Sea, which is, in Southern California. So you put that together, and now you add to that extraterrestrials telling people the San Andreas Fault is about to pop. Now, what the Zetas said is there's going to be a huge jolt westward. And the way Nancy described it, if you put your dinner on the table and this happens, your dinner's going to end up on the east wall of your dining room. Mm. So she never mentioned the water. So I said, Nancy, just to the west of San Diego is the Pacific Ocean. I'm not saying this is going to create a 100-foot tidal wave, but isn't water going to flood into San Diego? And she said, oh, yes, it will. Because if you have a huge jolt westward from the San Andreas Fault, which is east of San Diego, you get a huge jolt westward, you're basically plowing shallow San Diego, most of which is at sea level. You're plowing it right into the Pacific waves. Mm-hmm. So, of course, there's going to be flooding. So, like my father used to say, you put it all together and it spells mother. I don't know why he said that. Have you ever heard that saying?
Well, there's a song with that as a lyric in it.
Oh. Well, see, I wouldn't know that, but I'm sure my father would have known that. Anyway, I think we can, it's safe to say. Now, then somebody posted on Facebook, some big group that pretends to know everything, that Jade Helm is all about the weather.
Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll be back.
Stick around, everybody.
Okay, welcome back to hour 2 of the Friday, May 8th show. And once again, this is listener-supported radio, so if you're not supporting it, you won't be listening much longer, will you? So we can't cut you off, but if the station doesn't receive enough operating funds, which are not that much, but, don't let that stop you from being generous. You instead of going to get some impulse purchase, you could donate the money. Like, for instance, I bought some the new Burger King chicken fries. Oh my God, are they a nightmare?
Oh,
They're like the onion rings. They grind up the onions and put a foamy batter in there and eject them as onion rings. Well, they're not even close. I wouldn't even know if there was onion in there. And the same is true of the chicken fries. Oh my God, I should have taken that money. Of course, my wife said, we have to eat now. Let's try those new chicken fries. Okay. Bad. I mean, you get a dipping sauce. By the time you dip it into some barbecue sauce, you might as well just put a bottle of barbecue sauce up to your mouth and squirt some in, because that's all you get out of it. Awful. And my father was involved with advertising, and I spent some time doing photographs for advertising, and I know people in the advertising business. From time to time, I'm just going to mention some awful commercials. And another one that drives me nuts is where the Geico lizard, the gecko, he has a flat tire, and he goes, "Oh, I have a flat tire," and I'm like, I don't want to hear that even one more time. Anyway, so if you have some extra money, don't just write a little note to yourself, a Post-it note, put it on your speedometer, and you're out driving and you're thinking, I'm going to stop in and get a $5 Starbucks or an $8 Starbucks. And just say, no, I'm going to donate that money to Revolution Radio. This is, if you can't remember and you just can't get around to it, give yourself a Post-it note. Is it that important? I think it is. What do you think, Swami?
absolutely. I just signed up for the archive access myself.
Yeah, well, that's another way of helping the station. When you sign up for the archives, because we used to post them on YouTube, and then YouTube didn't want us, we're a little too free, a little too revolutionary. So the only way you can get the past shows is if you sign up with the archives. And that's a wonderful thing, and that helps the station.
And an amazing, just from this Swami's point of view, if you were to sign up for, say, Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, which you've been on several times, yep, or Caravan to Midnight with John B. Wells, when you sign up for those memberships, you're going to get, at the most, 7 shows a week. Caravan to Midnight, you're going to get 5 shows a week. Guess what? On Revolution Radio, you get over 70 shows a week for less than $5 a month. Smoking deal.
Makes sense. Well, I have many people say, can you please post your show somewhere, because, I'd like to play that for other people. I tell people what you say. I tell them, and they roll their eyes and walk away. And as soon as they get out of distance, it's like I never spoke to them. But if I could play your show so they could listen to it to see another person discuss this stuff, then maybe it would have an effect that this is real. So that's one way to do it, because you go to the archives and you can download it. Then it's on your computer. If you want to, you can break it up into 2 less than 1 hour segments and put it on audio CDs and carry around a little set and say to somebody, here, put this in your car, drive and listen to it. You can lead people to water. You can't make them drink. So, okay, I understand that. But still, if you want to have these shows for yourself, I've had people say that they try and write down every word I say. You can just imagine how many pages of information that is.
Wow.
Every Friday night. So, some people really, would benefit. And you know who you are. You're the kind of person that's going to take these things, put them on a disc, and give them to somebody and say, listen to this, and they're going to listen to it, and it's going to change their life. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about everything as we know it today is about to change. You see all kinds of people on TV saying the economy's about to crash. Well, yeah, it is. Not because of what they say it is, but yeah, it's about to crash. What do you think's going to happen if 30 to 50 million people are homeless in the United States? And they've got special forces manning all the bridges and the evacuation routes. How good is the economy going to be at that point? So, and if you're living in Florida, that's just plain wrong. And you know it. I know it. Why aren't you doing something about it? And the Gulf Coast, do you think that's got a future? It's beautiful. I see these ads on TV for the place to buy land is Belize. God, it looks gorgeous. But the whole thing, the fish are going to love your house after it goes underwater. Why can't people do what I said? Put your family in the car, look up on Zeta Talk and find a safe location, and then take a drive there and see if you'd like to move there or if you like those people. Maybe, if you evacuated and you have no place else to go and you end up there and then you find out, I hate everybody who's here in this town and they all hate me. This is not good. Now is the time to go find out where could there be another location. And there's all kinds of disputes in the family. Like one member of the family says, yeah, let's go. Another one says, you got to be kidding. Nothing's going to happen. And I know plenty of people, luckily I have Janet and I are on the same page. And so there's no problem. But I know plenty of people where they tell their spouse and their spouse goes, forget it. That's never going to happen. I want to go shop for some more shoes and handbags. I'm busy. Well, okay, fine. Great. But this is the time when you have to make these choices. Now, last week, did I discuss at all this guy who was, I don't think I did. I wanted to, but I don't think I did. Randy Kramer, who was in the Mars Defense Force. Did I mention him?
No. No, you didn't. I'm familiar with who you're talking about, but no, you did not.
Okay, so we're going to get to that in a minute. But first, I've got to say that Janet is friends with a woman in Bar Harbor who's a nurse. She was a nurse with the Veterans Administration, and she was sitting there doing nursing things in Bar Harbor, I guess at the Mount Desert Island Hospital. And all of a sudden, a carload of federal officials, 3 federal officials show up and say, you've got to come with us right now. She's like, well, what is this all about? And they go, well, we need you. We're not giving you a choice. You have to come with us right now. And they drove from Mount Desert Island up to Calais, Maine. Now, Calais, Maine is across the St. John River from St. Stephen. Lovely spot. Not much happens up there, I'll admit, but beautiful people. When you go to Canada, you need a passport to do it. But I love Canadians. As a group, I think they're just wonderful. I personally have not met a bad Canadian since. They have a great sense of humor. They're very polite. They're down to earth. They have common sense. I say about them, what's not to like? So anyway, Calais is like, you can go further east in Maine if you go to Eastport, but you've got to go across Cobscook Bay and then down a peninsula, and you might as well be at the end of the earth when you're in Eastport. But anyway, Calais is where most people that are in the coast of Maine and want to cross into Canada, that's where they cross, is at Calais. So they go to Calais, and guess where they've gone to? A huge weapons of mass destruction vaccine cache. Well, who knew? Did you know there was a huge vaccine cache in Calais, Maine?
No.
No. And they open it up and they tell her, you are going to go through all these vaccines and take out all the ones that are out of date and set aside all the ones that are about to expire and make a list so we can update these vaccines. Then they drive her back to Mount Desert Island, and her mission is completed, a mission she didn't know she was going to be doing when she woke up that morning. And on the way back, she passed a mile-long train. It wasn't a train. It was a long parade of Army National Guard trucks loaded to the gills with stuff covered with tarps. It looked like supplies and materials, not weapons or anything, not tanks or Humvees or anything like that, but a mile-long parade of trucks all loaded with stuff heading south on Route 1. Well, if you know anything about California and Maine and Florida, you know that Route 1 was the first road. It went from Maine to Florida, and it was called the Post Road. And then when they put the interstate in, they renamed it 95. And from state of Washington to Southern California, they also have Route 1, also known as US 1. And people at various locations knew it as the Post Road. Basically, if you went on Route 1 from Maine to Florida, you'd be taking your life at risk because it goes through some of the worst ghettos in America or on the East Coast. The absolute most poverty-stricken, poorest rundown areas you've ever seen. So you probably wouldn't want to do that. But 95 replaces it. But in Maine, 95 goes east to Bangor, and then it cuts way up at an angle, so it doesn't follow the coast, whereas Route 1 follows the coast all the way to Canada. So right there on Route 1, heading south, were all these materials. So I was with Nancy Leader, and she said that, when the new Madrid goes off, there's going to be an awful lot of sloshing along the coast. Now, she said several times that before pole shift, there's going to be 200 to 300 foot tidal waves. And I guess in the same way that there's going to be the jolt in San Diego, there's going to be the jolt on the East Coast. I would expect that the big walls of water coming in would be in the mid-Atlantic, like Washington and Baltimore, Delaware, Philadelphia, stuff like that. But I really don't know. But she said that they're probably positioning supplies for the jolt because people don't realize that Maine has 3,000 miles of shoreline. There's 300 miles from New Hampshire to Canada, but in that distance, there's 3,000 miles of shoreline. There's 3,000 islands offshore, and some of them are populated. They have ferries that run out to it. People live out there. And the highest island that I know of, Mount Desert Island has Cadillac Mountain that's 1,500 feet tall, but it's bare granite. What are you going to do up there? You can survive up there for the tidal wave, but then what do you do when you come down? It's all debris. But all the other islands, the tallest island on the coast of Maine is about 150 feet. And so if a 200-foot tidal wave come in, that destroys all the habitations on every island and all the coastal areas that are below that distance. Of course, somebody would have to call me. Excuse me while I not take this call.
Congratulations, you've won a prize.
Put it under a pillow. Will that help? So, and that's one of my friends. You'd think she'd know I have a show every Friday night. Anyway, so, stuff is definitely happening. Now, the original plan, and Dick Cheney and his billionaire friends spent over $1 trillion outfitting every commercial airliner in the world with a spraying system. This spraying system is designed for learning the exact moment of pole shift and putting chemicals of mass destruction, anthrax, the plague, you name it, H1N1 or whatever the avian flu virus is, who knows what, AIDS, you have no idea, Ebola, loading it into these tanks and spraying it just before pole shift so that not only will millions of people die in the 600-foot tidal surges, but inland, millions and millions and millions of useless eaters will die just before pole shift. And because it's just before pole shift, nobody is going to investigate and catch Dick Cheney and his friends for doing this. And so they're going to get away with it. That's the plan. So these planes are fitted with tanks and sprays, and everyone knows what chemtrails are. So they're not doing this now because then they'd all be found out and it would be revealed, and a lot of people would go to jail, and there'd be a lot of dead people too. So what they're doing is they're spraying aluminum particles to block anyone from seeing Planet X next to the sun. Now, I guess they've given up on Maine because we're such a big state. We only have 1 million people. But people tell me that Phoenix is being sprayed every day. LA is being sprayed every day. I don't know if you notice any chemtrails where you are, Swami.
Oh, yeah.
And this is all to diffuse the atmosphere in such a way that you can't see plainly next to the sun that there's an object that shouldn't be there. So my thought was, and that's why the Zetas decided they're not going to announce. They know the exact day, month, year, moment, hour of the day of pole shift, and they are not going to announce it, because that would give these people a chance to fill those tanks with the chemicals and the viruses and the bacteria and spray everybody. So by not doing that, and by having a lead up like the New Madrid fault and the San Andreas fault, pretty soon, by the time we get to pole shift, everyone's going to have a good idea of what's going to happen. And what's going to happen is that the police are not going to report for their positions. The pilots are going to say, I'm taking my wife and kids. I'm not flying to Phoenix. I'm taking my wife and kids into the Adirondack Mountains, and I'm not coming back. And that by itself means that their whole plan and all this $1 trillion they've spent, and that's how much it's cost, because they're filling those tanks all the time and putting aluminum particles in there, which are no good to breathe. It causes dementia. Well, what do they care? They can put bacteria and viruses in there that cause people to have colds, and it basically gets rid of the young and the old people. So you just have the 18 to 34 group surviving, where you can select your slaves. So that's their goal. And so the fact is that there's a vaccine cache in Calais, Maine, is really news to me. I mean, I don't know anybody that's ever mentioned that.
No, I've never heard it before.
You could imagine that there would be a cache of vaccines, let's say at the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. You could understand that. But to know that in Calais, Maine, there isn't even a military base there. To know that there's a cache of vaccines for weapons of mass destruction, and they're trying to update it. You see, this gets back to the whole thing that Obama actually is a friend of the people. He's trying to announce Planet X. He's trying to set up some way that there will be a place to evacuate people to and to have them survive. And not only have them survive, but people that come in from other countries, to have them survive too. And so that's on the one side. That's like the good. And then on the bad, you have the people that want to kill anyone that tries to cross the border. You'd like to have everyone poison and kill anyone that's a useless eater. They certainly don't want anyone coming to move onto their land because they're rich and powerful. They want the National Guard to guard their banks, their homes, and their businesses, and as if they could just continue on forever. So this, to me, is very interesting, because that means that somewhere at the core of this, there's a government that wants to keep the vaccines up to date in case they need them. What if Dick Cheney does start spraying people and they identify it? And now they'll say, well, we have vaccines stored all over the country and we're going to inoculate people. Well, most people, myself included, don't want any vaccine. But listen, if they're spraying Ebola and they don't have a vaccine, which they don't even have a vaccine for that, but if they did, I think I'd probably be one of the ones that lined up for the shot. I don't know about you.
Boy, I'd have to think about that one. I would just have to take the intuitive perception in that moment. I mean, right. I honestly could not tell you with any real certainty now how I would respond to it.
What you're saying right now is so important. A friend of mine was telling me earlier this week, and I just forgot until you said that he wanted me to mention this on the show. And that is, most people live this moment as if it's something to go through and get rid of because something's going to be better later. But you've got to realize you're always living in the present. You've got to make all you can out of what's going on right now. It's not, you can't just trash this moment and say, well, it's going to be better tomorrow, or if I can get through today, I'll be fine tomorrow. That isn't the reality of it. A famous guy, Ram Dass, who went to Harvard of all places, wrote a book, Be Here Now. So that's what you're saying, is be in the moment. When it comes, you'll deal with it.
Right. Matter of fact, I'll just share this with you. Ram Dass's guru, a man named Neem Karoli Baba, is part of my lineage as well.
Excellent.
Ram Dass's guru was a student of the man who was the guru to my guru. So,
wow. Well, there you go. Well, who would have known? So I'm glad I mentioned it. That's another one of those things just comes right out. So anyway, that's the question. What's going to happen now? I've got to tell you this. I've told everybody I'm friends with Nancy Lieder. I know a lot of people think they hate her, or they've been told you should hate her, and I have no understanding of why. Because this woman is, once you get to know her, and she gets over her grumpiness, which she's got, but she's all business, you know. She's like, millions of people are about to die, and if they would listen to what I'm saying and what the Zetas are saying through me, then they would be saved, and people could work together to have a better planet where people survive and work together. So, but anyway, she has been doing a series of interviews on this radio network, which I've never heard of. I think it's called the Emergency Broadcast Radio, or Emergency Broadcast System Radio, which I didn't know anything about. And they post on ZetaTalk.com, they post media, and then you can see that about once a month she's doing an interview on there. And they told her that the network is owned by high Homeland Security officials. Can you believe that? And they told her, do not mention Planet X. We want you to talk about stuff that's related to it, but we don't want you mentioning Planet X, Nibiru, or Pole Shift.
Hold on. If you take Nancy Lieder and subtract those three words, that wow, that's
so. But they wanted her on, so she's been done 3 or 4 interviews once a month. And the last one she did was talking about plate tectonics. And the way she talked about it, it was like, not that anything was going to happen soon, but, you know, this is the process. India was an independent continent. It drifted over and it slammed into southern Asia, and it's going to keep on going. And when pole shift happens, it's going to go right under the Himalayas, and everybody in India is going to die. Well, she didn't say that. What she said was, this is the process. The northern tip of South America is going to go west, but she didn't say this year, next year, or soon, or anything. She's just talking about it as a subject. So after she finished that show, the guy who's been interviewing her told her that his boss got an order from above in Homeland Security that now it's okay for Nancy to mention Planet X, Nibiru, and Pole Shift. Well, holy mackerel.
Let me share this with you just real quick, Gordon. This story came out from BBC today. Headline: Himalayan quote drop after Nepal quake. A swath of the Himalayas has dropped by around 1 meter as a result of the devastating Nepal earthquake, scientists say. So there you go.
Yeah, well, wait till it zooms up about a mile after India slides under it. So I have a friend who's friends with the family of the number 2 female climber in the world. She's like climbed sheer 1,000-foot granite cliffs with no ropes, just her fingers and her toes. And she's climbed Everest many times, and she's decided to start 6 months ago a climbing school in Kathmandu. And she put in the concrete foundation and the steel structure, because it's going to be a modern, structurally safe building designed by architects and engineers working together. And it's going to be a climbing school. And so the steel frame was up and the foundation was in, but nothing else when the earthquake hit. And it's one of the few structures that survived intact in Kathmandu. And but of course, all routes up Everest have been demolished, and it's going to take maybe more than a year to discover new climbing routes to climb up to Everest. And no Sherpa wants to be the first one to climb and see if the ground is stable and he sets off another avalanche. So it's possible that the days of climbing Everest in our lifetime are over.
Wow.
Because every single route up Everest is totally demolished with landslides, snow mixed with rock. It's very unstable. Nobody wants to take the chance to be the one to explore a new route, because that was quite a business. I mean, Nepal made a lot of money off people going to the base camps and and climbing Everest. So now, this is really interesting. And I've come across this several times, that people say they've been part of the Earth Defense Force, that we have off-Earth spaceships manned by Americans. And I remember I'd just gotten on the internet in 1995, 96, right? I think it was the end of 95, because I got on the internet in 92, and the only thing was a few university card catalogs. And I'm like, geez. And I decided to look up which universities had books on UFOs. And the only university, not even NYU, Harvard, you could look up their card catalogs. That was the beginning and the end of the internet for the public. With a 14K modem and my IBM XT, I went online, and so I decided, okay, well, as long as that's all I can look at is card catalogs, why don't I see which university libraries have books on UFOs? Well, none of them. Guess what? None of them. The only one that had one, and it was by Wendell Stevens, and it was Contact from the Pleiades, was the University of Miami. God bless you, University of Miami. But you can see that the program does not admit to there being flying saucers, nor can a student who's in a college to expand his mind and discover new frontiers and find out the far reaches of the edges of knowledge. Can you go in and open up a book and read it on UFOs? When, of course, that's not surprising. But when I originally moved to Stonington, Maine, which is a pathetic little village on the coast of Maine, the librarian, and that's where I moved in 1985 when I first moved to Maine, and I no longer live there, thank God. But anyway, the librarian and her husband were driving up the west side of the island, Deer Isle, and they saw a mothership about a mile in diameter with lights all over it, lit up like looking at some huge apartment complex in New York City, came out of the ocean and floated a couple hundred yards above their car. Well, she was the librarian in Stonington, so every time she had some extra money, she bought a UFO book. And I walked into the Stonington library, and there's like 300 UFO books in this library that would fit in your closet. I mean, honestly, the whole library would fit in your closet. and there's like 1,200 people in that town, and probably 3 of them read. That's the kind of town it is.
Okay.
I call it Stonatonia now. But anyway, so that just shows you. Now, here's a small town. The woman had a little discretion. She saw a flying saucer herself. There's 300 books on UFOs from Richard Hoagland, Brad Steiger, Wendell Stevens. I mean, everyone, Jacques Vallée, and this was, of course, 30 years ago. So I don't know what's happened to it since. But anyway, it just shows you what's going on. But when I first went on the internet in 95, and then I discovered, wow, there are a lot of websites, but they seem to all be advertising. But I gradually found there was information about UFOs. And there was this guy he was in the U.S. Navy. He was stationed in the, what do they call that? The Great Lake Naval
Great
Office?
Lakes, yeah, naval airs.
So something was really weird about that. So somehow, I don't know what his connection to Scientology was, but somehow he got control of an e-meter. Now, basically, and this is my understanding, I've never seen one, I haven't tried it, but my understanding is that it measures your galvanic skin response. So when you're lying or not telling the truth, you get some stress, and it shows up on the meter. So that's what they mean by being clear, is that you're always speaking the truth, so therefore there's nothing stressful, so therefore you have no reading on the meter. So he took with his wife, and using an e-meter, went back over what had happened during the 20 years. The funny thing about the 20 years is he couldn't remember a damn thing about it. All he knows was he went out of basic training, was stationed in the Great Lakes base there, and all of a sudden they're letting him go after 20 years of service with a full pension. Everything is happy. They said he did a great job. He didn't remember a damn thing. So he starts using an e-meter, and he discovers by asking big questions and seeing what the answers were. Now, you see, your soul knows everything. So your conscious mind is so battered and bruised, it hardly knows anything. So, but the interesting thing is that when you lie, your soul will mark the lie with stress. So that's what voice stress analyzers are. Your voice will change. So you can actually use this to figure out your own future. You can say, I'm going to have a lot of fun next Wednesday, or I'm not going to have a lot of fun next Wednesday. Whichever has less stress cracks in the voice is the truth. The one that's not true. So this is a lie detector that you can use by yourself, is just to speak the yes and the no of any question and listen to your own answer. And you will become gradually better and better and better at listening to other people. When you ask them a question and they give you an answer, you're going to say, I'm noticing little micro tremors in their voice with stress. Well, this e-meter measures your galvanic skin response, which is the same thing. If you're telling the truth, you're calm. When you're lying, and your soul knows whether you're lying, you may believe totally what you're saying and be utterly convinced that that's the way it is. And some of the most selfish, dangerous people on earth are like that. They have no compunction to lying at all, and they can do it as calmly. They can pass a lie detector test. So this is not foolproof, because there are people who learn how to do this, so they don't give themselves away. Those are called tells, when somebody does something that should give you a clue as to what's really going on. So this guy used an e-meter, and he discovered that his 20 years, he was stationed on a U.S. Navy space fleet on Mars. And I remember reading this. It was right when the internet first started, but the beginning of 1996, let's say.
Was this Michael Ralph by any chance?
I don't remember his name, but a search might discover him, because it's this guy, Mars, the e-meter.
Right.
Okay. So now I'm watching Hangar 1, which is the new MUFON channel. He comes on. It's right there. He's been talking about it for 10 years. You can look him up. You can read about him. His name is Randy Kramer. And his story is consistent with all of this. Now, remember that there's this guy in England, McKinnon, I think Gary McKinnon. He hacked into the Pentagon files, and he found a list of off-Earth Navy ships, and the list of men on each ship, and their pay grade and their pay.
Mm-hmm.
And the United States wanted to extradite him and imprison him and lock him away, keep him from talking to anybody. And the British government, after protests around the world, he wasn't trying to screw up the Pentagon or ruin anything. He just wanted to see if there was any area of the Pentagon that wasn't secured. And that's what he found, a list of off-Earth ships and all the men on each ship with their pay scale and their pay and their rank. So finally, the United States gave up on trying to extradite him, and so he's safe as long as he stays in England. That's Gary McKinnon. So that's consistent with that story, too.
Mm-hmm.
These people are based on Mars with an off-Earth Navy fleet. So, and that got to me. I went to visit a friend in New Mexico, and we're down on practically the Mexican border. And Up in Albuquerque, there's the Sandia National Laboratory, and there are tunnels that go from Sandia south. Well, I'm out in the desert, and I'm looking over at this ridge, and the damnedest thing, this huge double truck entrance, concrete entrance with a garage door right in the side of this ridge. It was a regular ridge. It was not like a covered up tunnel where they made a snake across the ground because they built a tunnel out of concrete and then they covered it. No, this was like it came out right there. And standing at attention on either side of the garage door, U.S. Navy personnel, like as if it was the tomb of the unknown soldier. Polished shoes, dress uniform, shoulder rifle over their shoulder, standing at attention in the hot sun. I'm like, and it was like 130 in the shade. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding. The U.S. Navy is out in the Arizona, in the New Mexico desert, southwest corner of New Mexico, guarding the entrance to this tunnel. So, you know, you might think, well, the Navy involves ships on the ocean and that's it. Well, you would be wrong. And most of the UFO reports, if you know anything about it, have gone to the Naval Intelligence Agency. So naval intelligence seems to be deeply connected with tunnel systems, secret projects, and off-base stuff. So on Hangar 1, last week, the new show, comes this guy. He appears to be in his mid-30s, bald as a billiard ball, named Randy Kramer. And he's evidently been talking about this for 10 years. So he lived out west, I think in Oregon. He goes to bed. He's 17 years old. He's in his bed, in his bedroom, and all of a sudden something wakes him up in the middle of the night. And the whole wall of his bedroom is white. And it's like it's a portal. And this light is streaming through into his bedroom. And two men dressed completely in black come through and wake him up and take him out of the wall of his house and bring him to an underground military base where there are 50 other teenagers, roughly 17 years old, men and women, have all been taken out of their beds that night. And they're in this huge hangar, and right in front of them is a gigantic triangular black ship, which he now knows is the TR-3B, which is basically our spaceship. Supposedly it can go 15 times the speed of sound, Mach 15. So they said, and this is the interesting part, because, you know, I've discussed that the government is trying to give people spit tests when they pull them over on the highway. They said to him, you 50 people have been selected because of your genetic makeup makes you more likely to succeed at what you're going to be doing. And we have a contract here, and you are going to be helped defend the Earth for the next 20 years. And it's top secret, and you've got to sign it, and you really don't have a choice. So they all sign the papers. They file into the TR-3B, which then takes off. And as they're leaving the Earth, the pilot announces over the intercom, take your last look at Earth. This is the last close-up view you're going to see for 20 years, but you're going to spend the next 20 years defending the Earth on off-planet military bases. And they approach the moon. They go around the dark side of the moon, the side you can never see from the Earth, and they land at a huge U.S. military base with 100-story buildings, huge buildings, domes, all kinds of stuff. They fly into this hangar, they get out, and they're told, you are going to be taken to Mars and trained, and you will be part of the Mars Defense Force. And so they get back on the TR-3B, they fly to Mars. There's a huge complex, United States military base on Mars, and they land there, and they go out, and they're trained. And he does not return for 17 years. Now, they told him 20 years, but he does not return for 20 years. The next thing he knows is 17 years have gone by, and he wakes up back in his bed and he's still in high school, but he's been doing something for 17 years, and he has no memory of it. None. Now, what I want to know, which was unclear in this story, is he now 34 years old?
Yes.
Or did they bring him back so he's still 17 years old? Because I would think, looking how bald he is right now, that he would have lost a lot of hair. But of course, I remember being in high school, and there were people in my class who were losing a lot of hair, even, at age 17. So maybe people thought, wow, he lost more hair than I thought he did. Maybe he was like that yesterday. I don't know. You know how people are. They don't notice a damn thing.
Right.
So he begins to be troubled by this. Like, what in the hell? I know too much. I'm far too experienced. I'm not a 17-year-old high school student, but yet I'm in high school at age 17. What happened here? And so he starts getting hypnotically regressed, wherein he relives what I just told you. So that is a fascinating story. So I think, I've asked Nancy and the Zetas many times to talk about it, and they go, no, we're only discussing pole shift and Planet X and preparation for survival and the graduation to the next dimension. And you really are wasting your time and everyone else's time by asking these questions, because time is so short. You should be preparing or becoming a better person so you graduate to the fourth dimension, and you should be preparing to survive and help your neighbors survive pole shift. So what do you think of that, Swami?
Well, I can tell any listeners who may be unfamiliar with Randy Kramer's story, you can go on YouTube and you'll find Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot interviewing Randy Kramer. Randy Kramer also did an appearance along with Simon Parkes from England, who has done a lot of talking about his experiences involved being the manted race. And Randy Kramer, Simon Parkes, and Alfred Weber. If you do a search for those guys, you'll find an excellent interview with those three. So it's well worth your time if you're interested in such subjects. Have a listen to Mr. Kramer in extended hour-long format where it's not just, a little TV section. And it'll make you think about things, that's for sure.
Yeah, and you put that together with what Colonel Donald Ware says about there being at least 6 different inner-Earth human civilizations and who have bases on Mars. And together they have an ambassador in Washington. And then there's an ambassador in Washington from Pluto, and there's another ambassador in Washington from Venus. And this is going to be in a book that's be coming out in August. John B. Leith, Leith, has died, but Don Ware is publishing his book. And you put all this stuff together, and it's a really big world out there. You think you got problems, or things are just...
We've got a guest, area code 617. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Boston.
Hey, it's Brandon from Boston.
Hey, Brandon. Welcome to the show. Gordon,
hey,
say hello to Brandon.
Hello, Gordon.
Hi, Brandon. I'm a big Red Sox fan and a Patriots fan.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's hating on us, but these days, but it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I have other things that have a priority, but if I'm not doing anything else, I always love to see how they're going.
It's a decent distraction, right?
Exactly.
I think Swami just, great show, first of all. I was listening in, and man, I could talk about a number of things. Sorry to call so late, but
no, I'm glad to have you, and let's start with what interests you the most.
Oh, geez, there's a bunch of stuff. that's going to take a lot of time.
We've got 5 minutes left in the
5 minutes. You're gonna have to sum up.
Okay. Let me just get. Swami had mentioned Simon Parks and Carrie Cassidy's interview with Randall, or Simon Parks too.
Randy Kramer.
But me and Simon Park, through Bill Ryan, have had a connection, almost in a fourth dimensional type reaction. He mentioned in one of his lectures that Doctor Who was one of these television shows that he had to watch and was quizzed on as a kid. And so I, being a big Doctor Who fan and knowing the sort of people, was, kind of tweeting this out like, hey, a member of the Parliament or whatever, elected member of the UK, actually, says this about Doctor Who. He was then interviewed, I think about a few weeks ago or a month ago, and asked specifically about those, about Doctor Who, and he fell very silent, which I found very, very interesting. I think I have to talk to him about that. But relating to my own experience, when I was young, it's my last name, so I'm forever young, but I was practicing meditation, and I was really into Bruce Lee and Taoism when I was 8 to 10 years old, and I was in a gifted and talented program. And we were taught to connect to that, those beings you would call, and, that are always there, and connect to your chi energy and the energy ball and the aura around you and your fingertips. And I think that was great description. Just look at your fingertips and the extension, the gray.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was amazing. But I had I come from a family, a generational sort of that took part in seances and are pretty famous for connecting with higher dimensional beings. There's been a lot of hysteria about it, but they used to hold, very famous, famous sort of higher, like the nine. There's the nine. That's my great great grandmother and grandfather. And so this kind of filtered down to me, where I had a few experiences where I was, I don't know what race or whatever, but it told me the whole story, and I was communicating. Oh, there
Listen,
you go.
Brandon, can you call next week? Because you've brought up already about 10 things I'd like to expand on and ask you more about.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for calling, Brandon, and I look forward to your call next week.
See you later.
Thanks, Mommy.
Namaste.
Well, good night, everyone, and thank you very much.